The Suikoden franchise, though it's been dead for over 13 years, still gets a lot of discussion and admiration across the web. As a means to explain its long-lasting affection, many point, rightfully, to the beautiful artwork, the unforgettable soundtrack, and compelling storytelling. But on a deeper level, what often gets mentioned is the world's complex sense of morality, the gray line between good and evil. Suikoden's world of right and wrong, or good versus evil, is often a matter of perspective. You can see that easily in characters like Joey in Suikoden 2 or the Man in the Mask in Suikoden 3. But what if we're wrong? What if morality in Suikoden is not gray? It's absolute. I believe that Murayama, the creator of the series and lead designer of the first 3 games, gives us an absolute version of good and evil, as defined by philosophers like Confucius, Zunzi, Aristotle, and Augustine. For my evidence, I'll be focusing mainly on Suikoden 2 and 3, but I'll also use some examples from the first entry in the series. The main driving philosophy behind Murayama's universe comes from the Chinese philosopher Zunzi, who wrote that human nature is evil. Following human nature and indulging human emotions will inevitably lead to chaos and revert to violence. Murayama himself admitted in a 2016 interview that he also believes humans are born evil, in a direct question about the philosopher Zunzi. Zunzi also said that rightness is created by conscious sages, not by human nature. By human nature, Zunzi likely means humans' base instincts, those thoughts and feelings that are guided by impulse or raw emotion. He believed that exemplary human beings, or sages, created the rituals and sense of rightness that allowed for the creation of moral societies. It's only from rituals and traditions, both personal and institutional, that we can overcome our human instincts to control ourselves. It's worth mentioning that Suikoden 1 actually begins with 2 rituals. First, the introduction of the hero to the Emperor to begin his career in the public life, and second, the consulting of Leknot for the future. Both of these introduce the player to a world in good order, albeit a magical one. And when the proper trials of the mountain bandits are foregone to enact a quick and personal justice, we see how the collapse of ritual is a sign of chaos. But if human instinct is evil and leads to chaos, then what's good? Sun Tzu based his ideas of goodness on Confucius, who had very vaguely defined 5 virtues. One article written about Confucius and Zunzi's sense of goodness wrote, "Like Confucius, Zunzi is more concerned with what kind of person to be than with rules of moral behavior or duty." Still, Suikoden is able to clearly define each of these virtues by showing us what happens when characters fail to live up to them. For that, we have a 3-part story of rigid morality. Our enemies in Suikoden 1 are Lady Windy, who, driven by greed, has the power to literally open a door to a chaotic other realm filled with monsters. More importantly, we have Barbarossa, who has been so one-minded in his love for Windy that he allowed his kingdom and people to suffer and collapse. An overindulgence of love was his downfall, and it's a theme that repeats in other areas of the series. In Suikoden 2, we're given Luca Blight, a man who has allowed his raw emotions to run every single aspect of his world. He is the absolute rejection of tradition. He murders his father. He cheats a formal peace treaty. He executes top generals on a whim. And ultimately, he pays for it. But he's not the final enemy. Joey is also the absolute rejection of ceremony. He murders the king. He manipulates tradition into making himself king. He cheats Luca to have him assassinated. He brings armed assassins to peace negotiations. He murders Annabelle in cold blood. He uses unconventional, underhanded tactics for war. He does it all for a good cause, but, like Luca, he pays for it. The tragedy of Joey's story is that he continually deprives himself of what he wants. He's not a servant to his instinct. He suffers for a greater good. But does a rejection of tradition really justify his downfall? Is it right to consider Joey immoral when he is responsible for saving so many lives? For that answer, we look to Suikoden 3. Luke, another man who, like Joey, rejects the customs and institutions of the world in order to serve a greater good. Another man who, even more so than Joey, is an antagonist. He cheats, lies, kills, and tricks in order to reach his goal. He has seen a future devoid of chaos, ultimate order, bleak, gray, and silent. He is the natural opponent to the underlying philosophy of Zunzi, that man should reject chaos wholesale. But the future he's seen is objectively bad for mankind. It should be stopped. So why is he the antagonist? Why does the victory at the end of the game come with his defeat? To answer that, and to understand why Joey is also the antagonist, not the hero who lost, we have to look at the final piece of the puzzle. Dignity. The idea of human dignity, the right of every human to their own freedom, and to be seen and treated as a human being. It's rooted most heavily in Catholic theology, but its underlying premise can be found in pop culture throughout the world. All human beings, says the Church, inasmuch as they are created in the image of God, have the dignity of a person. The right to the exercise of freedom belongs to everyone, because it's inseparable from his or her dignity as a human person. The idea of human dignity has been adopted into the secular world and written into the laws of warfare and the genuine understanding of human rights. A violation of human rights is something that violates human dignity. The two terms are so inextricably linked that the humanist organization Beyond Intractability uses human dignity in its definition of human rights. It goes on to say examples of human rights violations include genocide, torture, slavery, rape, enforced sterilization or medical experimentation, and deliberate starvation. All of these are examples where human dignity is ignored. Deliberate starvation. Joey deliberately starved the entire city of Greenhill. Luke of Blight wanted genocide. Barbarossa's imperial agents used torture. And Luke violated human rights when he committed entire populations to a violent end. The result of his efforts would have been nothing short of genocide, even if it wasn't his main goal. Necklord is, in many ways, the embodiment of this realm of evil. He enslaves people to his power, tortures, and murders, destroys entire populations of cities, and probably much worse. These villains were doomed to lose because in the world of Suikoden, evil is punished. Suikoden gives us two simple rules to explain what makes a man evil. The first is that our nature leads us to evil, and the second is that violating someone else's human dignity is evil. While I believe the stories of Suikoden's various villains, including secondary villains like Captain Raud, are enough to sufficiently prove the point, it's still worth looking at examples of heroes doing good. Odessa fights to end human rights violations. Thomas fights to create a safe refuge for those in need. Victor is given the opportunity to put his selfish love before the greater good, and he defeats his inner nature with the swing of a sword. Pan sets aside his undying love and loyalty to the man that was a father to him. Nanami removes herself from the war, abandoning the brother she loves so that he can carry on the effort unimpeded by his love for her. All the heroes gave second chances to the men who had fought against them, rejecting the nature that may have thirsted for revenge. In summary, Suikoden's morality is not gray, it's black and white. Evil is defined as a rejection of tradition, the conscious violating of human dignity, or an overindulgence of human nature. Good is defined by restraint, charity, and obedience to tradition. Evil is punished and good is rewarded, at least on a grand scale. Philosophers have long struggled to create a simple system for defining good and evil, and I think the Suikoden series has largely succeeded in doing that. I hope that we can all live by a code of tradition, humanity, and integrity, and I hope that we all, somehow, will be rewarded for it. Thanks for watching.